They used to joke about it, late at night, over coffee gone cold and cigarettes smuggled past site restrictions. You'd hear them whisper about the old man. Some gave him nicknames. Others just called him the thing in the wall. But none of us ever laughed when we were on the shift assigned to his wing. No one laughed when you could smell it. That sour, metallic scent leaking through steel-reinforced airlocks. Some anomalies kill you. Some make you wish they had. SCP-106 isn't like the others. It doesn't hunt like a predator. It doesn't react like a living thing. It waits, listens, rots. I worked with the Foundation for 11 years. I saw horrors sealed inside concrete and myth. I watched reality bend, gods whisper, and minds snap like twigs. But it, SCP-106 was different. Not just dangerous, not just cruel. It enjoys it. They never tell you that in the reports. The official files describe a corroded humanoid figure appearing to be an elderly male in a state of advanced decomposition. Skin blackened and cracked, no visible eyes, yet always aware. It leaves behind a trail of corrosive mucus, rusts metal with its mere presence, and somehow melts through solid walls as if they were made of paper. That's what the documents say. What they don't explain is the sound. That wet, peeling sound it makes as it emerges, like meat tearing off the bone, followed by the crunch of rotting teeth grinding against stone. Its containment chamber is a story all its own. Standard procedure is reinforced lead-lined steel, 20 layers thick. Suspended by electromagnetic supports, submerged in acid-resistant gel, pressure sealed from all angles. But the problem isn't keeping it in. It's knowing when it'll want to leave. SCP-106 does not obey patterns. It doesn't follow hunger, curiosity, or instinct. It breaches containment seemingly at random. Except, it's never random.
We first classified it in 1922, after a series of disappearances in rural France. Entire families gone, homes abandoned with food still on the table, no signs of struggle. Except for one thing, a black stain on the floor that couldn't be cleaned. Metal rusted straight through, even after it was replaced. Foundation agents followed the trail to a World War I bunker, the kind buried under decades of mud, wire, and forgotten maps. That's where they found the first recorded emergence. A tunnel, narrow, half filled with sludge. At the end, movement. When it stepped out, the lead-filled agent dropped dead on the spot. Not from attack, from a stroke. They say he went blind first, started screaming about someone standing behind his own eyes. The rest of the team tried to contain it using standard anti-entity protocol. Isolation, suppression, tranquilization. Useless. None of it worked. Tranquilizers passed right through. Fire seemed to amuse it. And as for isolation, it made its own way out. It melted through the concrete and vanished into a rusted hole that hadn't existed seconds before. When they followed, when they dared to chase it, they found themselves in a hallway that shouldn't have been there. One man came back. He didn't speak for 6 months. When he did, he just kept repeating, "It's not old. It's just waiting." We don't know if SCP-106 was always like this. There are theories. Some say it was a man once, a soldier left to die in the trenches, broken by mustard gas, buried alive under corpses, and forgotten by the world. That he made a deal to escape death and became something worse. Others believe SCP-106 isn't one creature, but a phenomenon. That what we see, the decaying body, is just a fragment of something larger. A sliver that leaks into our world like oil through cracked glass. Me, I've read the reports. I've studied the footage. I've seen the black fluid burn through titanium. I've watched it step through walls without even rippling the surface. I don't think it is a man. I don't think it ever was. It behaves more like rot. Intelligent rot. It doesn't chase. It waits. It doesn't feed. It drags. The Foundation officially considers SCP-106 a Keter class anomaly, denoting extreme difficulty to contain, high threat potential, and a history of repeated breaches. Unofficially, there's a reason why his file gets passed down, with warnings scribbled in the margins. We tried everything to predict its appearances: motion detectors, seismic vibration, infrared scans, even psychic probes. But it doesn't leave a signature. It just leaves damage. Its corrosion is not chemical. It doesn't follow laws of physics. The decay it causes is more like entropy accelerated, like time folds in around it, and everything around begins to forget what it means to be solid. Steel turns to sludge, flesh begins to tear, and sometimes the wall opens. Containment revisions have occurred more than any other SCP on record. Over 90 breaches in less than 2 decades, each time worse than the last. One site lost 17 staff members in a single event. They were found inside the walls. Some fused with the pipes, some crushed in sealed rooms that no longer existed on the map. And one was still alive. Blind, skin gone, breathing through blood. He died, muttering, "It let me see the inside of time." That line never left my head. Even now, I wake up hearing it, smelling that rust, and something sweet beneath it, like rot and fruit mixed together. Some of the newer staff thought SCP-106 was just a relic, an old threat they had under control. But you only think that until you're alone in the hallway and the lights go out. You only think that until you hear it, the slow, wet dragging, like something pulling itself forward, using fingers that no longer remember how to be hands. That's what they didn't tell you in the reports, that it doesn't need to break through walls anymore. It waits inside them, and it's always listening. There was a time when we thought SCP-106 was just another aggressive anomaly, something that could be contained with enough concrete and procedure. But we were wrong. We didn't understand what it was doing. We didn't understand where it was taking them. Not until we started getting survivors back. Let me explain something before we go any deeper. The SCP-Foundation classifies anomalies into categories based on how difficult they are to contain, not based on how dangerous they are. That's a common misconception. It's about predictability, control, and response. Safe class anomalies are those we understand well and can contain with minimal effort. They don't change, they don't resist. You lock them in a box, and they stay there. Euclid class means it's less predictable. It might move on its own. It might react unexpectedly. Not necessarily lethal, but dangerous if mishandled. And then there's Keter class. Keter doesn't mean powerful. It means we don't know how to stop it. It means the anomaly can't be contained reliably, and any breach could lead to disaster. SCP-106 is the textbook definition of Keter. Intelligent, cruel, and absolutely impossible to anticipate. But that still doesn't capture it. Not fully. Because SCP-106 isn't just escaping its cell. It's dragging people into something else. Something worse. The pocket dimension is not just a place. It's an environmental weapon. A prison that exists wherever SCP-106 decides it does. It's stitched together from rot and malice, and time doesn't work inside it. We learned that the hard way. In 2013, a D-Class returned after being taken. His ID tag confirmed he disappeared in 2009. 4 years had passed here, but inside, believed he'd only been gone for a day. His hair hadn't grown, his body hadn't aged, but he described living in the tunnels for weeks, eating things that weren't food, running from walls that grew arms. He was lucid until he saw a mirror. Then he began tearing at his skin, screaming that the pieces aren't where I left them. We started running tests, using remote drones, digital mapping, tethered exploration. All of it failed. Signals die the moment they cross the threshold. Physics doesn't survive the boundary. One theory suggests the pocket dimension is a manifestation, not a location. That it exists only when 106 creates it, woven out of entropy and psychic trauma, a landscape sculpted from the minds of its victims. But that theory doesn't explain the consistency. Multiple survivors have described identical structures, a black spiral staircase, a hallway with doorways that open into loops, a pit where things whisper up at you. How can a hallucination have blueprints? I still remember the worst one. His name was Alvarez, mid-30s, tough, cocky. We used him as a lure subject once. I'll explain that part later. When he came back, he was quiet. For 3 days he didn't speak. Then, during a routine psych eval, he drew something in charcoal, not with his hand, with his teeth. A spiral, covered in teeth, rooms folded inside each other. At the center, a figure, slumped, watching. He said, "It doesn't live there, it is there, and now I am too." He died the next morning, massive cardiac arrest. Autopsy showed black corrosion along the lining of his heart, as if it had started rusting from the inside. What 106 does to people isn't random. It plays, it experiments, it doesn't kill right away, it breaks them, and if they're lucky, it puts them back, but they never come back whole. Somewhere deep in that place, it waits, it watches every movement, it adjusts the hallways, it listens for your footsteps, and when you think you found a way out, That's when it opens the wall behind you and pulls you back in. It's not a hunting ground, it's not a prison, it's home. And he brings you there so he can make you understand what it means to rot while still alive. We tried everything else. Shock chambers, acid baths, dimensional tramps. For a while, someone even proposed building a secondary pocket dimension to confuse it, as if you could out-rot the thing that invented rot. None of it worked. The only thing that ever brought SCP-106 back into containment was screaming. Not any scream, not noise in general. It needed to be real, genuine human agony. We started calling it the bait protocol. Internally, it was known as Procedure 106 Lure. The euphemism was intentional. Makes it sound clean, clinical. But I was there. I signed off on it. I watched it happen. It wasn't clean. It was a sacrifice. Here's how it worked. Every containment breach by SCP-106 followed a pattern. It would vanish into the walls, disappear for hours or days, then reappear to snatch personnel or D-class from isolated areas. It never attacked crowded rooms, never in front of cameras. It lacked privacy. But we found that when a human subject was placed in extreme distress, when pain and panic reached a certain threshold, SCP-106 would appear. Not always instantly, not always predictably, but consistently enough to become protocol. So we built the Lure Chamber. Imagine a steel box, 4 meters by 4, reinforced walls, audio and visual feed, environmental controls, an observation window that only looks in one direction. In the center, a surgical restraint chair, bolted down, blood-stained, always damp. We rotated D-class personnel in, sometimes volunteers, sometimes chosen. The key was suffering. We used sleep deprivation, chemical irritants, electrical probes. Once, when it breached and refused to return for 4 days, we resorted to physical dismemberment. And that worked. 4 hours after the subject began screaming, the back wall of the chamber began to bubble. Molecular structure breaking down, metal liquefying. And then he stepped through, SCP-106 silent, smiling. The screams stopped. The subject was gone, and 106 was back in the cell. That was the trade. 1 life to contain the monster. And we all told ourselves it was necessary. 1 life to save dozens, maybe hundreds. A grotesque kind of math, one that gets easier the more you say it. But here's what they don't tell you. Sometimes it doesn't take the subject. Sometimes it just stands there, watching. Sometimes it reaches out a hand and touches the glass, not to attack, not to break through, just to smear something across the surface. We never found out what. The stain couldn't be wiped off. Sometimes, even after it's gone, the screams keep going. Long after the feed is dead, long after the chair is empty. We once sealed the chamber for inspection and found fresh blood on the walls. No one had entered in 12 days. There were discussions about improving the bait system, about making it automated. We ran simulations using AI-generated distress audio. It didn't work. It had to be real. The pain had to be alive. It was a ritual, whether we wanted to admit it or not. One of the senior ethics officers at Site 19 tried to halt the protocol in 2014. She argued that it violated every standard of human rights, even for D-Class. 3 weeks later, SCP-106 breached containment. It appeared in her office. She didn't scream. She begged. It didn't take her. It took her assistant. Dragged him through the ceiling, screaming in Latin. He'd never studied Latin. The ethics officer reinstated the protocol herself.
I remember the worst case. March 11th, 2016. We had a lure subject in place. Young, 19, convicted hacker. First time in field rotation. He wasn't even scheduled to be used. But we had a breach window. 106 was out for nearly 48 hours. 2 containment teams already lost. We needed a scream. So we put him in the chair. The kid didn't scream. He cried, pleaded, told us about his sister, his dreams, that he was innocent, but he didn't scream. SCP-106 didn't show. So someone, not me, but someone, authorized escalation. Chemical burns to the lower extremities. Even then, he didn't scream. He went into shock. The wall still opened. But instead of taking the subject, SCP-106 walked past him, ignored him completely, walked up to the reinforced viewing glass, and stared directly into the observation room. And it waited, as if we were next. That's when I realized something none of us wanted to say aloud. SCP-106 doesn't feed on pain. It feeds on fear. Not just from its victims, but from us. It's not just hunting bodies. It's feeding off the psychological cost of containment. Every time we trigger the bait protocol, we lose something. Not just ethically, something deeper. We create suffering to keep it still. And that suffering leaves scars. We've lost staff to suicide, PTSD, nervous breakdowns. I know one man who gouged out his own eardrums so he'd never have to hear the screams again. Another took a blowtorch to his own stomach, screaming, "Let it take me so the others can sleep." They tell you this work is for the good of humanity, that the Foundation protects the world from things it's not ready to understand. But what does it mean when you become the monster just to contain a worse one? What happens when the price of safety is innocence burned in a chair, while something that smells like rot and copper watches from inside the wall? We called it the lure protocol. We called it containment. But it was a sacrifice. And the worst part? It worked. There's something I haven't told you. Not because I forgot. Not because it didn't matter. But because I didn't want to admit what it means. It started small. The kind of details you learn to ignore after years in the Foundation. First, the smell. A faint scent like rust and mildew. Something wet and metallic, just beneath the threshold of recognition. I smelled it in the break room.
then in the elevator, then, one night, on the collar of my own shirt. I told myself it was plumbing, cleaning chemicals, even imagined it was stuck in my nose after the last containment breach. But it wasn't. It was him. Then came the static. Not in my ears, in the lights. The hallway outside my quarters would flicker when I passed. Then the walls began to sweat. Thin trails of yellow condensation beating between the concrete seams. Not water, not vapor. It smelled like meat left in the sun. And still, I said nothing, because part of me knew I wasn't being haunted. I was being watched. The encounter came on a Thursday, late. I hadn't slept in 2 days. I was reviewing breach reports alone, trying to clear my head. The temperature dropped first. One moment the air was dry and warm, and the next it was wet and dead. Every surface felt heavier. My chair creaked beneath me, not from movement, but from decay. Then I heard something behind the wall. Not footsteps, not breathing, peeling, like wallpaper being torn off in slow, wet strips. I stood up, slowly. There was no alarm, no breach notification. But I knew what I was feeling. I'd written those reports. I'd interviewed survivors. The air smelled like rot, like battery acid poured over bones. And worse, the wall across the room was moving, just barely. A pulse, a tremor in the concrete, like it was breathing. And then, it split. Not shattered, not cracked. It opened, soft and slow, like it had always been a mouth waiting to part. And through it stepped SCP-106. He glided. His limbs hung too long. His skin dripped like black tar, stringy and wet, sloughing off bone that didn't look like it had ever belonged to a man. And he smiled. Not a grin, not a twitch. The whole face peeled into a crescent, folds of necrotic tissue curling back like burnt paper, revealing something underneath. Not teeth, not quite, just depth. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. Every part of me screamed to run, but my muscles locked. My thoughts slowed, like they were sinking in oil. He stepped closer. The floor beneath me bubbled. My boots hissed. I smelled leather melting, my own skin beginning to sting. Still, he didn't touch me. He just stopped an inch away and watched. And then, he reached. Not for my throat, not to drag me away. He reached for my face. His fingers hovered, dripping, shaking slightly, like they were savoring the moment. I don't remember screaming, but I know I did. I felt my vocal cords tear. Then, it touched me. It wasn't pain. It was collapse. The second he touched my cheek, my vision folded inward. I saw things, spirals of bone, tunnels lined with screaming mouths, walls pulsing with open eyes, my memories torn out and pinned to a ceiling of teeth. I saw myself in the chair, in the lure protocol chamber, but I wasn't screaming. I was laughing. And then, nothing. I woke up 6 hours later. Same room, same chair. No alarms had gone off. No one came looking. My left cheek had blistered into a spiral. The skin around it sloughed off when I touched it. And on my desk, in the concrete where the floor had corroded, was the imprint of a hand. His hand. Perfect. Stained black. Facing up. Waiting for the next one. At first, they said I was lucky, that no one else had survived that kind of proximity, that I should be dead or missing, that the spiral on my cheek was nothing more than chemical irritation from corrosion. They gave me 3 days of medical leave, told me to get some rest, to journal the trauma and speak to the on-site therapist. But I couldn't rest because the smell came with me. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was in my clothes, in the ventilation, in my imagination, but it was always there. Burnt copper, black mold, a sweetness that didn't belong, like rotting syrup poured over rust. I scrubbed my skin until I bled, showered until the water came out red, burned the bed sheets, changed rooms, changed wings, changed floors, didn't matter. Wherever I went, it followed. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard walls flexing, felt the air thicken around me, and sometimes, in the space between sleep and waking, I would feel that hand again, just an inch from my skin, never touching, just waiting. That's when the mirrors started lying to me. I'd catch my reflection a second too late, like it wasn't keeping up, like it had to remember where I was, and sometimes it didn't move at all, just stood there, blinking, even when I didn't. I went to the side infirmary, demanded full diagnostics. Blood work came back with trace elements of iron oxide, elevated cortisol, cellular degradation around the temples and lower spine. My nails began to darken, my teeth ached. Still, the reports said I was fit for duty. I knew what that meant. They weren't checking if I was sick. They were checking if I was changing. Because this is what no one tells you when you survive SCP-106. You don't come back whole. You come back marked. I started feeling things. Concrete made me dizzy. Steel left a taste in my mouth. I began sensing decay before I saw it. I could walk into a sealed room and tell you where the first crack in the wall would appear. Not because I'd studied it, but because I could feel it opening. Like something inside me recognized it. Like something inside me wanted it. One night, I woke up standing in the sub-level corridor, barefoot, eyes open, mouth whispering something in a language I don't know. The lights were dead. The walls around me were dripping, and in the darkness ahead, I saw him. Not fully, just a silhouette, arms too long, head cocked slightly to the side, like a corpse trying to understand its own posture. I should have run, but I didn't. I took a step forward, and he vanished. That's when I knew. He wasn't haunting me. He was waiting for me to catch up. The infection isn't physical, not entirely. It's something deeper, a rot in the pattern of your life. You forget things, or worse, you remember them differently. Your timeline starts to bleed. Events out of order, faces you don't recognize in places they were never supposed to be. Your shadow lingers too long when you walk away. You blink, and sometimes you come back somewhere else. Not far, just shifted. And every time the spiral grows a little deeper under your skin. I tried to leave once, packed my things, got as far as the exit gate, but when the guard checked my ID, he paused and said, "You've already signed out." I hadn't, and yet my clearance log showed my name. From 2 days ago, there was footage of me walking out the door, smiling. I'm not sure how much longer I have. Maybe weeks, maybe less. Whatever SCP-106 did to me, it didn't end with a touch. It started there. I'm not just marked. I'm becoming something. Something that remembers rot like a language. Something that can smell fear like blood. Something that's already slipping between the walls without needing to tear them. They'll call it a breach, but it won't be. It'll be me. This will be my last recording. I don't know what I've become. I don't sleep. I don't feel cold. I walk through the lower levels, and the lights die when I pass. Sometimes I leave rust behind me. And last night, I saw my reflection blink after I did. I can hear the walls. They're not speaking. They're calling. Somewhere behind the concrete, he's waiting. Not with hunger, not with hate, with recognition. Because I'm one of his now. If you find this tape, burn it. Forget my name. Seal the room. Forget I was ever here. And if you ever smell rust where there shouldn't be any, don't follow it. Don't look for me. It's still here. And so am I.